So, Man Chronicles wanted me to rant about internet addiction, if I've ever had internet addiction, just about the subject generally. And I thought, well, this is a big enough topic to put into its own video, so instead of including it in the rant podcast, I'm just going to spout off about it here. Um, Internet addiction is a weird subject because I look back at 2018 when I first moved to Maine and I saw the signs of very real internet withdrawal. I didn't have internet for the first like several weeks of moving into that house that I had moved into. And the only thing I could really do was read books and write stuff. I could go to the laundromat to use the internet that was there, but otherwise, I didn't have much in the way of internet resources. You know, there was no modem, nothing. I was just stuck using whatever it was at my disposal, which was a pretty crappy laptop with Half-Life 2 on it and basically nothing else. So I had to read. It was the only thing I could really do. And I think obviously, and Man Chronicles linked to playlists from Healthy Gamer GG, who I've ranted about in the past, thanks to JNest telling me to talk about them. Um, it tends to be people who are depressed or who are in very lonely kind of situations who are more susceptible to being psychologically addicted to the escape that the internet provides or that video games provide. Is that for me? That was basically like the only source of social interaction I had. It was the only source of reward that I had outside of eventually when I was making my own fun with writing, and that sort of helped me cope through the process. But I felt completely alone. I didn't want to be alone with my own thoughts. I didn't want to deal with being in the world. Um, and so I was very addicted. I felt like I needed the internet just to survive. Um, and that was for a while I was feeling, just immense pain just being at home because I didn't have the distraction that the internet provided. But when I compare that to August, I think it was either August or the month before that, where we had this big power outage here at the home that I'm living in now last year. Where I didn't feel any internet withdrawal. It took us several days to get the internet turned back on, and I spent a lot of time just sitting in my room in the dark, in the heat, in the dark, just meditating. Maybe not even meditating. Like sometimes I would be laying on my bed, completely silent, just alone with my thoughts, thinking about things, just sort of peacefully breathing. Reading, I did actually a lot more reading because I had more books, so I could focus on reading more. And I wasn't quite accustomed to interacting socially with my parents the way that I am now. I I'm much more social with my family than I used to be. Um, and I mean, I don't really have like a very good relationship with my mom, and so maybe the fact that she moved out contributed to that. There's a bunch of, I have a bunch of theories and conversations I've had about why I've been able to have a better relationship with my family over time, but that's a very new thing. I didn't have a very good relationship before, and so even then, in early August or what have you, when the power did go out, I didn't, have like a social network that I could rely on if I felt really bad the way that I do now. To where if the internet's, cut off for a long period of time now, I know I have, books that I can rely on as entertainment. I know I have, my family that I can socially interact with. And so I'm not completely relying on the internet just for that. Um, and I know that if I'm forced to be, completely alone with my own thoughts, I'm not going to be super depressed the way that I used to be. And so I think, if I look back at my own internet addiction, that it's been quite some time since I've relied on the internet as much as I used to. I think a lot of what it's tied to is just the mindset that you come into it with, who you are, and what you're using it for. The internet for me was a way to distract myself from having any thoughts. That the moment that I had thoughts and that I was forced to introspect on my situation was terrifying. I didn't want to think and be alone with my thoughts because I was going to immediately fall back into the depression and then feel terrible as a result of that. Um, but if I look, in August, even though I was pretty depressed, I was recovering. I at that point, we look at like summer and fall of that year, 2019. I was starting to really recover from depression, except for, of course, September when I was put back into school, and then I, just became completely suicidal. Um, but, beyond that little incursion there, I was able to go so much time without the internet because I wasn't relying on it for, completely blocking out the world around me because I didn't need to block out the world around me. The world around me was fine. I was okay with it. I accepted it. And I could find peace in just existing. I couldn't do that before. And so now, if you told me, Star, I'm going to completely cut off your internet, I would be okay with that. Um, uh, I don't. I might actually try to make a record of some kind. Intentionally cut myself off from the internet, see how long I can go. I think that'd be interesting. But as for right now, I feel totally comfortable with the idea of not being on it because I've spent, quite a bit of time not being on it, both, forced to by the outside world or, sometimes I just take sabbaticals and breaks myself just to get away from everything. Where, there was like a month and I want to say, what was it, November? It was like, I think it was November around that time where I almost never used the internet. I wasn't on Discord. It was like a whole month I was off Discord, and I just wasn't on the internet very much. Um, and so I've been in situations where I've been forced off by outside circumstances, and I've been in situations where I took myself off intentionally. Um, and so generally, I'm pretty positive towards the idea of being offline. I wouldn't call myself addicted by any means now, but I have been in the past because of the mental health circumstances that I was in.